So Moby Dick might have been the book that killed the joy of reading for me, but it's not my most hated book. My most hated book goes to a very frustrating read called In the Woods. It's part of the Dublin Murder Squad by Tana French. It's her debut novel. And what it's supposed to be is a murder mystery. What it actually is a steaming pile of garbage. Just a real brief summary here. It's about a detective who has a very traumatic past, shrouded in mystery, that he can't remember. And so he is a part of a murder squad trying to solve a modern day similar murder. Before I get into my thoughts on the book, let's very quickly talk about the content. This book had excessive language. Like, you just walked away feeling like you needed to maybe wash out your mouth, you know? There was sexual content. It wasn't excessively so, but it was, I would say, moderate. There was some gruesome content, which was kind of a little bit grody. And it overall had a negative take on religion, specifically Christianity. So if you're somebody who obviously is religious, like the grand majority of the world's population, you might find some offense there. My thoughts can be narrowed down to 8 reasons why I hated it. The first one, there was absolutely no resolution to his backstory. The hook at the beginning about what happened to him as a kid, you never find out the truth of what really happened. It's just left. And then the book ends in such a way, spoilers, the book ends in such a way where it makes it clear that his time on the murder squad is over, and that's it. The next one goes on with his partner, so that's, well, ex-partner. So that's it. You might get little pictures of what happened over his childhood, but never like the backstory of the traumatic event with the blood in the shoes. You never find out. The second reason why I hated this book, the story is such a downer. Pretty much everything that could go wrong does go wrong. You get more and more irritated, and it's just never resolved. And you see this man slowly descend into insanity. He loses his job. He just kind of goes a little bit crazy. I mean, just poor decision after poor decision. And it just gets so frustrating because it really is no resolution. Third reason why I hated this book. The author really has no idea of how to end a story. There are 429 pages here, and about 100 pages were worth it. She really took a long time to say nothing. And my point being that if she would have just cropped it down, maybe had a good editor, you would have had a pretty quick story that would have been just as disappointing, but wouldn't have wasted as much time. The fourth reason why I hated the story was the vocabulary. I don't consider myself to be a stupid person. I have a pretty large vocabulary. I've been reading for a long time. You know, I read graduate level books for fun. You know, I did go to grad school. I stopped because I just didn't really feel like that had anything for me, but not because the workload was too heavy, just because I just didn't feel like, I kind of felt like I was just wasting my money. And who knows, I might go back to grad school, but in the time being, this isn't an issue of intelligence, okay? But she used so many different words that I didn't know that I felt just like a huge moron. And when you have to look up every other word, it's like, what am I doing wrong here? Obviously, I was not the target audience of this book. That probably has more to do than anything. Some of her words, you can tell, were favorite words, and she would just repeat them. The fifth reason why I hated this book. The case that he is solving, the modern day case that reminds him of his childhood traumatic event. It's not resolved. Like, it's solved, but not resolved. You know what I mean? The book really had no conclusion to it. And the killer gets away. I understand these kinds of things happen. I get that. But for a murder mystery, you really need some kind of satisfaction of some sort. The sixth reason why I absolutely hated this book is the writer had kind of like a vendetta, like a desire for revenge against religion, which once again, I feel like that's fine. Like, you can feel about religion however you feel about religion. That's fine. But when you take every single opportunity you can to knock it and make fun of religion, it's just kind of annoying to people like myself who are religious, especially if you don't accurately represent. You know what I mean? Like straw man fallacies. So you don't give like both sides. You just kind of give. It's like Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. My only complaint, if I could make one about those stories, would be it seems like there is no such thing as a genuine religious person in the book. They're all just like doing it out of duty and tradition, which I think has happened in a lot of religions for a lot of history, but I really felt like that was a complaint until you get further on into the series, and then it kind of resolves itself. In this book, though, there is no good religious people. There's just a constant rip on mocking religion, and it's just like everybody's doing it, like everybody's in on the joke, right? And I think that the equivalent would be going to an atheist and trying to make fun of, science. They're just going to be like, well, that's not, and they're going to try and correct your misconception of science, and it's kind of like that, The seventh reason why I absolutely hate this book is so much of the story was unnecessary. I know I already mentioned that it took her too long to get to the ending, but we could easily make this a separate point all by itself. And, a lot of the story was just super unnecessary. They tell you when you go to school for writing, they tell you, not to throw in a bunch of unnecessary things, but kind of keep on point, key details that are actually relevant to the story, and that kind of stuff. But she didn't listen to that. She just throws in a bunch of things that just don't matter. And you're left wondering, why does this matter? And it doesn't. The eighth reason why I hate this book, she does this thing with her writing style, which I absolutely hate. And I know it's a first book, I get that. But I find repetitious sentence structures to be super annoying. She'll give independent clauses, which are structured in such a way to be a standalone sentence. And they always have the same kind of flow to them, kind of giving listed details, and it really doesn't work. Let me give you an example. This is one I wrote on my Goodreads. I walked in. Fluttered papers, smell of pee, poop on walls, chunky renter. End of sentence. I get it, but it irritated me to pieces. She could have said, I saw fluttered papers, right? But she doesn't. She does the same repetitious structure. It just kind of felt like a little bit irritating. If you do it once or twice stylistically, I can understand, breaks up the monotony of the reading. But when you do it like this, it's kind of like... It just got irritating for me. Now, maybe I'm nitpicking, who knows? But it was such a terrible book that it was easy to nitpick. There are other things that were bad with the book, but such as, for instance, the characters are not overly that likable. It's little things like that. But we'll just stop there.